It's time for TWiG This Week in Google, our one-year anniversary, 52nd episode. Gina Trapani, Jeff Jarvis, and Jyri Engeström, former Googler, join us to talk about the future of social media and Google, and a whole lot more. This Week in Google is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Google is provided by Cachefly, CACHEFLY.com. This is TWiG This Week in Google, episode 52, recorded July 21st, 2010. Android goes to war. This Week in Google is brought to you by Go to Assist Express. Tech support for clients and colleagues in person is expensive and time-consuming. Support smarter, remotely, with Go to Assist Express. For a free 30-day trial, visit gotoassist.com/twig. It's time for TWiG This Week in Google, episode 52, our one-year anniversary, and happy anniversary to our panelists who are still with us, hard to believe. Gina Trapani from Lifehacker and smarterware.org. Gina, it's great to see you once again.
Time flies when you're having fun. I can't believe it's been a year.
Isn't that amazing?
Amazing. Amazing. So happy to be here.
Our most successful show launch to date came out of the box with a huge audience and has only gotten stronger. And that's because of people like you and Jeff Jarvis, who is... But now we owe AOL money. Now, knock it off. Jeff is with BuzzMachine.com. He's also professor of journalism at the City University of New York and the author of What Would Google Do? Good to see you. You're at home today.
Yeah, I am. Trying to write the book.
Not
doing a very good job of it.
Oh, well, there you go. It's called Public Parts. At least we know that much.
Yes, we do.
Also joining us, very happy to have him, former Googler, former founder of Jyri, and now just man about town, Jyri Engeström. Hey, Jyri, it's great to see you again.
Good to see you guys again.
Engeström.com. And you're are you kind of just a early stage angel investor now? Kind of, is that what you're doing, or?
Yeah, that's mostly what I've been up to since I left Google late last year, and I'm also working on something new. So,
oh, you can tell us, or is it a secret?
A hint.
Mobile. Something involves mobile again. Surprise, surprise.
Mobile really is what Jyri did so well. One of the reasons I really liked Jyri and was a big fan of it was integration with the Nokia phones. It was kind of a Twitter that had all of the features you wished Twitter had. You may still wish Twitter had, because it doesn't. And did you work on Buzz at all when you were at Google? Because Buzz seems a lot like Jyri.
Yeah, so when we arrived at Google, Buzz didn't really exist. So
you and Petri.
That's right, our team. And so we were involved. I was actually the product manager of something called Activity Streams, which then evolved into Google Buzz. Also Google Profiles. I think I was the first product manager of what eventually became known as Latitude. So all these social products that nowadays sort of have their independent lives in the Google Cloud.
So you could probably give us some insight into whether there might be a Google Me, a Facebook-type connection between all of those into one social network. Does that seem like something Google's working towards?
I hope so.
He's not going to tell us. He's going to be coy, isn't he? All right.
Once a Googler, always a Googler.
No, I had to ask.
Well, I can't give it all up.
No. But if they were going to do something like that, Jeff, you help me. You're the journalist here. Ask him a question. If they were to do something like that, what would it look like?
What would it be like?
Nothing. He's not going to say a word.
Silent.
He's silent.
Oh, is that a question for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here's my, if we're going to talk about this, I might as well,
Yeah, I'll tell you why I ask. You know that I was one of the few thousand people who gave up on Facebook due to privacy issues. And I definitely miss it. I was just signing in. There's a new iPad application called Flipbook or something like that. Flipboard. That aggregates your Twitter and your Facebook into a magazine. But I feel like I'm missing a leg because I don't have a Facebook. But I don't want to go back to Facebook. I have no desire to go back to Facebook. But I want something Facebook-like that I can trust. And that's why I'm hoping Google will do something like that.
Sure. Me too. I think that what my experience at Google was sort of managing these products was that, and kind of part of my what I'm frankly frustrated about is that you see mobile client, but it's been kind of integrated into Google Maps and is known as Latitude, and we have what started off as the activity stream, equivalent to the Facebook news feed, which sort of has been shoehorned into Gmail, and then we have Google Profiles that sort of became linked to the Google search property. And all of these to the user appear to be like three distinct, separate products that nobody sort of, is able to use them sort of like you can use Facebook as just one coherent whole social product. And so that's what I'm frustrated about, and that's what I think Google needs to fix.
Yeah, they've got the pieces, in other words.
That's right.
But they haven't joined them all together. And I think everybody on this panel, certainly I would count myself, are heavy users of all of those pieces. I use Latitude. We're talking. You're wearing a Foursquare shirt, and Gina Gina last week and I were talking about how Gina had poo-pooed Foursquare for years, and now is a Foursquare user.
I'm a convert. I'm an addict.
And I've decided.
I'm coming back.
You're coming back?
Yeah, I just was out of the habit, was all.
Yeah.
I'm seeing Dennis Crowley on Friday morning, so I'd better be on.
I just hope that it doesn't do anything yet. It just, you check in, and I saw the other day the bakery that I was nearby had a deal for the mayor. So I'm just starting to see little things like that, coupons. I think Starbucks gave $1 off Frappuccinos for the mayor of the local Starbucks. But it seems like there's so much more in that information. And I know lots of people are talking to Facebook about making deals for that information. Google, for one, is talking to Facebook about integrating Facebook results. Location is huge. You've known that, Jyri, for years. It just it just can't get started. So I decided, while I continue to use Latitude, the only real use for me for Latitude right now is Google Talk. I pipe Google Talk, my location into Google Talk, so people know where I am.
Right.
I don't know what else to do with it.
That's useful.
Yeah. Yeah, if you look at my Google Talk status, it says where I am.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the difference between active and passive. It's like Latitude sort of hovers there in the background, and everybody sort of forgets about it.
But people are concerned about that because, in fact, Google now sends me an alert every week or so saying, "Don't forget, everybody can see where you are."
Right.
Understandably, there's some concern about that. There was a lot of heat over Apple's new iTunes terms of service that says we're going to aggregate information about your location and send that off. And Google's been doing that for some time. And people don't like that idea. And yet there seems like there's so much value in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think actually that, we learned that in Jyri in the early days because we started off with a passive client that was just active in the background. It was only for Nokia phones, but it did what Latitude does today, which is just, broadcast your location. In fact, broadcast a lot of other stuff too, such as, whether your phone was on silent or if the ringer was on, so people would know what your status was, whether they could expect you to answer if they tried to phone.
So useful. Oh, man.
You remember all that stuff.
I loved it. I got a Nokia phone so I could use it.
That's right, I remember.
Yeah, I loved it.
One of his 347 phones.
No, it was my N95. I loved that N95, except the battery life was about 2 tablespoons, so... Didn't
about as equivalent to today's.
Yeah, right. See, Android, we're back to square one with battery life, but
but the point was, we pretty quickly realized that actually active, as counterintuitive as it sounds, the requirement of making people do some work to check in is actually much more engaging than just passively, following their presence.
But it gives you more control, too.
Yeah, users want it, and the data is more valuable. If I write, hey, this place has the best croissants in town, that's valuable. And Gina and anybody who follows me now has when they go to that store and they check in, it says, oh, by the way, Leo says try the croissants. That's incredible.
It is. It's powerful.
That's Beacon. That's Beacon brought to life.
Yeah, that's what Facebook was trying to do.
Kind of way it ought to be, yeah.
Yeah, but Facebook was doing it without your permission and without your check-in. They just said, "Hey, Leo Laporte just bought, you know, some Viagra. Maybe you might want to think about it." And then Leo Laporte went, "What? I didn't give him permission to use my picture." So obviously,
that's the reason they shut down.
Yeah, vegan was a vegan was a bad idea. Vegan was one of many bad ideas Facebook's had. It seems to me Facebook also, like everybody, this is, I think, what's going on. Everybody sees the power and the value of this. Facebook was willing to just say, "Okay, we're going to do it. We're just going to go ahead and integrate it." And its users went, "Oh, man, what are you doing?" And there was a big backlash. And now everybody, including Google, is saying, we better, you know, they learned their lesson from Buzz. We better really step back and think about this. Is that your sense of what's going on, Jyri? Is it really fear holding people back now?
Well, if you look at, you know, Google, when they launched Buzz, this was, I think we probably talked about this last time on the show when Google had launched Buzz, when I was here for the last time, was, you know, Google had its own privacy issues with Buzz. That sort of, I wouldn't think it's fair to compare it to Beacon, but, you know, they wanted to make it very easy for people to share as much information as possible. So by default, they enabled, you know, your friends, your buddies, your contacts to actually show up on your profile. And obviously that created a huge privacy issue for some people who wouldn't like that at all.
So it's reasonable for people to get into Google to be a little skittish, gun shy.
Well, you know, what I think this all goes to say is it turns out that it's actually some friction is good. You know, we can see both in the privacy sense that you want to have these barriers that actually make people, you know, consciously give access to others. But not only that, because this is another thing that we noticed when we did Jyri. I believe we were, you know, among the first, if not the first, to actually aggregate what we were calling the live stream at the time. You know, when it was not just your status updates, but we also pulled in feeds from the other services that you were using, which then became very popular with things like Friendfeed and now even Facebook's doing this. And, you know, when we look at the stats, the usage stats, we quickly realized that the updates that actually got the most engagement by far were the ones that people were still manually typing in, you know, the stuff you see on Twitter today. Whereas the stuff that was pulled in automatically from other feeds wasn't really getting any engagement at all from people's audiences.
You guys were, it must gall you a little bit that you were so far ahead of everybody else, and still are, actually. They still haven't implemented some of those things that you were doing in Jyri way back when. It galls me, and I didn't even have anything to do with it. So let's talk. There's quite a bit of news stories, and I guess since we started with the Buzz topic, let's start with Buzz. Buzz has a fire hose and 5 new fire hose partners. The fire hose is that thing we talked about a lot with Twitter, the idea that you could get every update, every bit of information. And by the way, with Buzz, there's a lot of metadata. There's a lot of extra information, things like comments, likes, shared counts, plus all the buzzes. And those will be given or sold, I'm not sure which, to collect a GNIP, Superfeedr, One Riot, and PostRank Analytics. Now, you have something to do with Superfeedr, right, Jyri? That's
right. I'm an advisor.
So you must know then what the deal is. Is it a freebie? Do you pay for it? How does this work?
No, it's available. I mean, the Buzz fire hose is available for free, basically, to these companies.
You do have to make a deal with Buzz, though. You can't just walk up and say, plug into the fire hose.
I believe you can just walk up and plug in.
Oh, that's right. Neat. Yeah. Wow. What does Superfeedr plan to do with it?
Well, Superfeedr is trying to real-time enable all the feeds out there on the web. And what it does is, obviously the Buzz feeds are actually already real-time enabled over this protocol called PubSub Hubbub. That, you know, is basically a way of doing updates in push.
So anybody who used PubSub Hubbub could subscribe to the Firehose.
To the Buzz Firehose, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can now do it with a single subscription. Before it was also possible, but you had to separately subscribe to all of the public, feeds of each Buzz user. So now you can just, basically do that with one single subscription. So it's made very easy. So anyway, what Superfeedr then does, for instance, with the Buzz data, is that it normalizes it. It turns it into this format that's called activity streams, which is like a standard for representing these activities across different services. And then it just makes it very easy for subscribers to subscribe to the Buzz Firehose, but also all the other Firehoses or feeds, updates from other services that they aggregate, and enable you to do stuff like, for instance, track, which is this, essentially define a set of keywords that will then trigger push updates to you, so you can do things like, I don't know, track your brand name or
I see. So
name.
I've signed up for Superfeedr, and I see these little snippets that I could then. These are API calls. Is that right?
Yeah. So basically, what you're doing is this is like a server-to-server, sort of like a B2B
using Jabber
service, right? So you can. So all you're doing is basically, if you're a publisher, you can delegate your feeds to Superfeedr. So for instance, if you already have RSS feeds, but you don't want to build your own, scalable way of pushing these feeds out in real time, then you can just basically say, well, I don't want to build this myself. I'd rather just delegate it to Superfeedr. And so you basically let Superfeedr then start to do the pushing for you.
So I've subscribed, for instance, to our RSS from the TWiT page, and now it's going to be delegated to Superfeedr, and then I can now use it in some way.
Well, right. So after this, Superfeedr will automatically push you an update every time that the feed gets updated.
Using PubSub, or how does the push work? Yeah.
Using PubSub. They also have an XMPP interface, but I think PubSub is more popular there.
So I would have an endpoint of some kind. We've talked about, for instance, a river endpoint. We would use this like crazy, a river of data from a variety of sources. So we would provide that endpoint. Actually, we'd probably use a Jabber server as an endpoint, pushing that then out, that people could subscribe to it. And so they'd get all this. You'd be aggregating all this stuff into it. We'd create an endpoint, and then people could subscribe to our endpoint, and we'd get it all from Superfeedr.
Yeah, it's possible.
Is that a common usage case, or?
I think so. You really need to talk to Julian Genestou, who's the founder. This is actually this part that I like about this. So the way I discovered Superfeedr was I was still at Google, and I was helping Brad Fitzpatrick and Brett Slatkin with a pet project of theirs called PubSub Hubbub. I'm not an engineer, but I was, sort of helping them a little bit with the product and messaging of it. And I don't know, basically did some slides. And so one day, this, French dude kind of, just walks up and says, "Hey, I want to build a business around this. I want to create, a startup completely around, this protocol and enabling everybody out there to basically create a hub of their own for free." And that sounded like a really fantastic thing to do. So I got very excited about it. And later when I left Google, Julian actually came back and said, "Hey, now that you're free, would you be willing to become an advisor?" And, it's basically one guy. And I think he has one part-time contractor somewhere in like Germany. And if you look at the amount of data he pushes right now, I think he's pushing
1.6 billion entries delivered so far. And look at that counter turn,
And this is all, basically the same work that somebody like Twitter is doing. So it's pretty incredible that he's pushing right now, I think about 50% of the amount of data daily that Twitter pushes, which is about 25 million feeds. I think Twitter is around, or 25 million updates a day. Somebody out there can correct me if I'm wrong here. I think Twitter is around 50 million. And it's just one guy, basically. So as an engineering feat, I really respect that.
No kidding. No kidding. And this is part of the tooling that's going to be needed, kind of the piping that's going to be needed for real time everywhere eventually, where just data is constantly flowing in two directions, really.
Yeah, I think the main point, the reason why this is relevant, I think, for anybody out there who's wondering what the heck is real time about, is it's a question of engagement scores. So if you take any update and you watch the impact it has, if you can push it out immediately, it's going to have a much higher probability of actually engaging your audience than if there is delay. And this is really what we're talking about here, is improving engagement.
It's exactly what we saw. The reason we do this live now, we still encourage people to download. The majority of people still download all of our shows, but I feel in the long run, engagement exactly goes up as people are participating in this show as it's being produced. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry to mean.
Well, doesn't it help too that if you have these various feeds in one place, it enables new kinds of analysis to help you prioritize the feeds and whatever that name of that iPad app is, link out to other things and display them in new ways. You're not trapped in one feed and one client.
Right. This is what we always wanted from Twitter. all Twitter ever really gave us was search. But really what we'd like to do is analyze it and say, you know, I mean, I guess Twitter Trends now is kind of going part of the way there, but it seems like there's so much data that the third parties should be able to have their way with it and come up with interesting
ways to
use it.
What is the name of that new app for the iPad?
Flipboard, is that what it's called, Gina?
Flipboard, yeah.
Sure.
It's actually the first
I
app that's
await
made
the
me
app
want an
that makes me buy
iPad.
it again. Is this thing so wonderful, or is it just a Scoble moment?
Jury's still out. Feels like a Scoble moment, doesn't it? You know, and as I said, I'm using it only as a one-legged user. It's beautiful. I mean, it has that going for it, but because I'm only using it. Let me pull it up and I can show it to you. Only using it as a Twitter thing.
Does it do analysis of the feed in, or does it just give you? Does it just go and fetch the links?
Good question. I don't know.
It looks like it's just a really nice browsing
It's just a pretty
experience.
way to look at it. Right?
Yeah, with images and links. It looks like if someone tweets a link. Now I'm saying this, I don't own an iPad and I haven't actually tried it. I just watched the video and kind of drooled a little bit.
Watch this. You know, this is cool. See, there's no.
When are we going to
stuff.
stop oohing and ahhing over turning a page?
It's just like paper, Jeff. It's just like paper.
It's pretty.
It's just like the old days. Remember that mod? We used to have pages.
This is exactly the stuff Jeff hates.
It's so whimsical.
I'll tell you the other problem right now is it's getting so much press because of the big influx of money and so forth that I can't sign into my Twitter account. It's a new way to get a fail whale. It is what it is right now.
And it takes your password. It's not
of fail whales.
Yeah. Let me see if I can sign in now. I've been trying all morning to sign into this darn thing, and it's just not been.
Today, everything's being down. Google News was down. Facebook Stories, their whole new thing was down.
Mm-hmm.
So there's bad karma today.
Can't connect to Twitter. Yeah, it's broken. So I'm sure it's wonderful. It's pretty. Just I mean, this really defines the iPad experience. It's pretty. Utility.
I think they said something online about adding new users in waves that they're just being hammered right now.
Yeah, obviously they're being hammered. Well, what that does show you is there is a huge amount of interest in these kinds of things. We are interested in getting information in new ways. We are interested in parsing that information. And I think this is actually how the conversation got started before we went on the air. I'm getting the feeling that there is some more engagement happening with Buzz. People are finally starting to get around to finding out about Buzz and participating in Buzz. And Jyri, you said a number that is unverified but would be astounding if true, that there's, 10 million active users daily? No, you didn't say that, did you?
Oh, it's just a rumor I heard.
That would be stunning. What is Twitter? Is it 100 million? 80 million?
Daily actives?
85 million? I can't remember what the daily actives is on Twitter. 10 million would be truly mind-boggling. That must be the Gmail number. Or maybe because of Gmail it has that kind of...
Right. Well, you would expect, Buzz to have a pretty high number just because of the fact that it's embedded in Gmail.
Have you noticed this, Gina? Well, I do notice because Gina is now in it. She was just porting her tweets to it. Now she actually buzzes.
Yeah, once in a while.
Once in a while, so I know.
I still need it to be in my Google Apps account.
Yeah.
But
can't do that yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
Well,
it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, I'm a Buzz fan. I still like it. I like the engagement and the conversation that goes on in Buzz. And it is the first place I check now. I do not check Twitter particularly often.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm just a weirdo.
There's a value in having threaded conversations where you can follow a conversation that's connected,
value.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but it depends on the quality of the conversation. I get some really dumb and dorky conversations going in Buzz. And so
fair.
people, I'm sure, are mad at me that I don't join in, but I kind of think, I'll go to another cocktail party, thank you very much.
That hasn't turned off Leo before.
Yeah, I'm used to dumb and dorky. I'm used to dumb
Leo,
and dorky.
In March... PC World says that according to RJ Metrics, Twitter showed number of Twitter users at 75 million.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Is that
whether
daily?
That's daily, monthly, I don't know.
I bet you that's monthly.
That's monthly is the number that Facebook
It
uses.
says between 10 and 15 million active tweeters.
A day. No.
I'm guessing.
Well, if you're active, you're going to tweet daily. I mean...
Yeah. Well, what's the definition? I think we have 500 million number for
That's
Facebook.
monthly.
Isn't that
That's monthly. Yeah. By the way, that tonight, Diane Sawyer will interview Mark Zuckerberg and become the 500 millionth Facebook user.
Let's all Friendr.
Do you think it'll be an actually good Zuckerberg interview?
Forgive me if I'm skeptical. I've never heard of a good but you know what?
Interview.
He won't sweat. I can almost guarantee you there will be no sweat
no Richard
involved.
Nixon moment.
I have faith in Diane. I have faith. I'm holding out.
You think she'll make him sweat?
I don't know. I'm gonna watch it.
I wish it were Barbara Walters, then he'd cry.
Yeah. Why are you, Mark Zuckerberg, like a twee? What kind of twee would you be?
Though, that I think that the Facebook bashing is getting to be predictable and boring.
That's why I stopped it. I didn't want
there were 3 stories this week that I blogged, about positive Facebook news, and in every one of them, the reporter has to find some way to do a slap and a snipe.
Yeah. Hey, here's a metric from our chat room: the TPS, tweets per second, and the average TPS is 750. But during the final of the World Cup, 3,000 TPS, 4 times the normal rate.
That's crazy. Superfeedr doesn't store the data, right, Jyri? It's just kind of a middle server for passing the pings back and forth, for saying I've received the ping, so now I'm going to ping the subscribers.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think they're currently storing the data.
Yeah, that's what you're doing with ThinkTag. Do you have a new name, by the way? Should I call it something else?
Not yet. No new name yet. Yeah, but I'm not. ThinkTank's purpose is definitely not to store the fire hose. It's to store just the people you care about, your network's data.
Right. Well, and in fact, that's what one of the things that when people were begging for the fire hose last year from Twitter, that's one of the things they said is, "Oh, you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the fire hose." It's
I wouldn't even want to try storing the fire hose.
It's too big.
Just handling the pings at that rate is an incredible engineering feat.
Yeah,
but storing that data is like, no one can do that except Google.
But you store mine, right?
But I can store yours, and I can store your friends, and I can store your followers. Yes. And those are the only people really.
Because you're storing it, you can analyze stuff, right, Gina? Are you learning stuff from that data?
Yes, exactly. That's the kind of thing that we want to do: sentiment analysis and keyword frequency and keyword clustering and just trends amongst your social circle, that kind of thing. It's all about your network.
So you're more interested in the human relations or the content relationships?
The content as it sort of comes out of the human relationships.
I think this is where the power lies, right?
But but that's for kind of a regular user. For a user like the White House or I don't know, the city of New York, it's about sort of connecting with citizens and coming up with policy ideas from that. And that's a little bit of a different relationship, right? But like for me and my readers, or Leo and his readers, or you, Jeff, like it's about friendships and relationships, as more traditionally defined versus fans of like some big brand. But I think there's use, both ways.
It's a very interesting tension going on right now because we all want this. We all would love this information. There's a huge monetary value in this information, and yet there's this huge fear over privacy. And this is why I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg continues to say over and over again, we know you want to connect. We just want to help you connect.
Right. Well, Twitter, but see, that's the kind of knee-jerk thing that happens here. Twitter, you're publishing to the world. Unless you made it private, you're telling the world, and anybody can follow you unless you block them. And so what privacy?
Right.
Facebook, I think, is different because of, and we've discussed this in the show before, the notion that you're creating a closed society. Right. But as long as you can respect that, and the issue that the people didn't really understand the defaults, and fine. But yeah, I think he's got a point. I've seen 2 studies recently, one I blogged about, one I didn't, that showed people who were given the opportunity to have more privacy than less. And even though they'd say in their, if you ask them like a survey, oh yes, I care very deeply about privacy, they would not act that way. In both cases, they were given discounts to reveal information, and they said, fine. The people yelled at me online that, well, they all lied. Well, maybe so, but if they were trying to protest against privacy policies they didn't like.
But that's the logjam. That's the roadblock that keeps us from doing all these cool, neat, wonderful things with aggregated data from people. So maybe should we just get over it?
Well, I think it's kind of pointless to argue about whether public data or private data, which one is better. The fact is that what we just need is for that to be a transparent consumer choice. then people will just make up their minds about it. And I think there's a lot of evidence towards saying that, well, generally individuals tend to get a lot of benefits by opening up and being more public about. I think we all attest to that as users because I'm assuming we all have public streams, and it helps us get ahead in life because it's just like before we started the show, Leo, you were on your chat channel asking somebody a question,
right,
or just posting a question out there, which you wouldn't be able to do if you had a very closed group of people because
right,
they might not just be online at the moment.
Right.
So
well, and also it's a good example here because my God, Leo was showing his ignorance. He was revealing something of himself.
I do that a lot.
And was happy to do so because good things came in.
It does reward ignorance, doesn't it? Or at least a willingness to ask for help. Yeah.
I've been reading this ridiculously thick book. I'm show off, yeah. The printing press as an agent of change. And what was fascinating to me, and I blogged this the other day, was that in the early days of books, they knew they were going to mess up. The scribes had always messed up. Movable type they messed up, and so they got in the habit of having errata, and it was an open door to collaboration. The knowledge that you were going to mess up and make mistakes is what enabled people to correct, and map makers would. This fascinates me. It's just like today on the internet. One map publisher would reward people who would go off and correct his data and find new data. And people would do projects and new kinds of things around it. It was a very Wikipedia kind of thought. And we turned books into stone sculpture when they really, at the early days, were wet clay.
Isn't that interesting?
It's just I'm fascinated by this stuff.
That's amazing.
There's a cultural attitude that comes with both privacy and this notion of control and perfection and all kinds of things. You're not going to get these benefits if you don't open up, as Jyri says, and show your ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that public interaction sort of leads to really high quality private interactions too, right? Jeff, didn't you say that a friend of yours asked you a question about surgery that maybe he or she couldn't have asked if they didn't know that you had gone through it?
Recently. Exactly, Gina. But it only happened because, as you say, I was public about it.
Public, right. Because I would say that some of my higher quality interactions happen on Twitter, are from protected users or DMs that sort of get sparked from a public tweet. So I think there's definitely value in having those private channels. Those private channels are very valuable, but a lot of conversations can start with the public.
But that goes what Jyri is saying too. Is that the control is in your hands? You know what is what. This is an email. The fact that they're asking an email means that I'm not going to reveal it. I've had one email conversation, one Facebook conversation, and yesterday someone well-known sat down next to me in a meeting in the morning and wrote on a pad of paper that this person had just had a biopsy. And the reason this person said it was because didn't you talk about your cancer?
Because of your blog, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, what's different is biologically we're tuned to do that in a select case, in shared intimacies. Well, this is something we've always had. We have shared intimacies. It's a way of building intimacy. Doing it in public kind of it's a natural urge, but it short circuits that to and fro, that parity. So you're sharing intimacy globally with people. You would never have done that in the past.
Well, except that I could have written an article or something.
I guess you could have. The means were there. The means
as soon as the printing press came along or the stage came along, you were speaking to people who were strangers.
Right.
And you were making them less strange.
And I guess your point is you're the modern man who lives, person, I should say, who lives in public. And what you're saying is, look at the benefits I reap from living in public. And are you saying that they outweigh the negatives?
I'm saying that every time we decide something, we should make the balance. And that certainly it's your choice. If people have prostate cancer and don't want to tell the world, I don't think I should out them. There's no reason to. But that there is benefit to the individual, to the people they talk to, and to the group to be revealing. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that if gays had stayed in the closet because they were cowed to do that, wouldn't have the rights we have today. And, now, that led to a logic that said you should out people, and I think it is going a bit too far. Nonetheless, to convince people that there is benefit in coming out and being out, then leads to a greater benefit for the whole of the community. And the publicness is it's the weapon you have against those who would try to make you stay secret. And whenever something's revealed, it doesn't say so much about the person who reveals it. If you're afraid of revealing, it's because people are bigoted around you.
It's a mirror. That's why Stonewall is so important. That's why Rosa Parks is so important. Precisely. It's a public act.
So to me, the challenge for Facebook, the interesting challenge for Facebook, because I think Zuckerberg truly, honestly believes this. I really take him at his word on this.
I think so too.
That he does think an open world is a better world, and I agree. So the challenge becomes, how do you sell that? The same way Google has the challenge constantly of selling the idea that shared knowledge is going to benefit everybody.
What about the cases, notorious cases, of somebody being in public and being attacked, whether it's Kathy Sierra or this poor 10-year-old girl whose YouTube video was 4chan and now she's getting death threats?
There are edge cases and there are bozos.
So those are edge cases.
But if we had to manage all life based on what could happen, sorry, I'm going to go to my cave now.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So
Absolutely.
here's another sort of, now that we all agree that, this is a personal choice that people should be allowed to make, and that there's clear benefits for probably both sides here, but definitely, certainly for being public. And Facebook's kind of, I think, behind Twitter here in the sense that, they started off with a private model, and all of this commotion about Facebook's privacy issues has to do with the fact that they are trying to, little by little, move the dial from private towards public. Now we've got another player in the picture, which is Twitter. And since I'm coming to this because we talked about the Google Buzz fire hose. And, a major idea behind the entire web, and if you go back to the starting base of Google, and PageRank and search, the fact is Google was made possible. Google couldn't be possible if all that data hadn't been out there on web pages publicly crawlable.
Right.
And if you look at what's going on right now, we have millions of people on Twitter who are making the conscious choice of making their tweets public. However, that data is then kept from becoming publicly crawlable.
My problem with Twitter in a nutshell. Very well said.
Well said.
And that is from I'm a sociologist by training. So from a societal perspective, I think, Twitter, I have tremendous respect for, probably the entire management of Twitter, which just keeps improving with better people. But at this point, I strongly disagree with them because I think it's almost, if you claim, what is their thing, be a force for good, then it arguably is one of the key aspects of being a force for good to enable this data to be out there, because then other people can build the types of superfeeders and whatever's, we've seen here that will actually, deliver more value based on that data. And that's impossible if we have to make these backroom deals to access the firehose.
So question to both you, Jyri, and to Gina, what is the one thing you wish Twitter would do?
Open up the firehose.
Yeah. Boy, we've been begging this of them for 2 years since Bear Hug Camp. I very vividly remember this conversation going on. And Facebook's the same way, by the way. Facebook, now they allow you to keep that data longer, but they really don't open that data up. Of course, their problem is they have a compact with their users kind of not to open up that data.
Yeah, now they really kind of can't, especially now.
Yeah, that's the difference.
But Gina, is it just a question of getting the fire hoses? You said that the expense of taking it is extreme. Is there also an API to the stored database that you might need to pay for, but that would be more valuable to enable you to do more valuable things?
Oh, I mean, definitely. Yeah, for me, it's less about the fire hose and more about, like, if I've posted more than, 3,300 tweets, I should be able to get all of them. And right now you can't, and it's kind of an artificial limit because it's a performance thing, and they keep promising, hey, we're going to make this available eventually. But right now, I couldn't just go to the API and get all of my tweets in 2007, right? Because I posted more than 3,000. And there are a few limits like that. You can't go back to, all the tweets that have a particular keyword in them. It only goes back a few days. And a lot of people say, hey, it's ephemeral. That's the whole thing. But that bugs me that data is just sort of gone, especially my data, the stuff that I've posted.
Clearly, Twitter doesn't believe that, or they wouldn't have given their data to the Library of Congress. They know it's not ephemera, that,
exactly.
That it has some
and the changes in the analysis matter. It's that story I've talked about here before that Twitter is 97.3% accurate in predicting the success of movies at the box office. There's data there that you want to compare and say, how much more are people talking about this or that? There's news value there. There's
definitely.
And if you go, Larry Page says that data saves lives, that by keeping data out there about flu and health, we're going to save lives by knowing where the gigantic epidemic is going to come from. We'll save lives. Well, I think at some point that's true of Twitter too.
Twitter saves lives. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, if you could analyze and say,
it did in Haiti. It did in Haiti. Absolutely. People were tweeting, "I'm stuck under the building. Save me."
Or if it's the analysis of the data too that says, "My God, look at the increase of the word fever in this part of the world."
There you go. No, but it's not. And the thing is, Twitter is just a little thumbnail of what all is possible here, and that's the key. And that's what's so interesting about having these emerging standards like PubSub, Hubbub, and Salmon, and all of this stuff, and the ability to stitch something together out of all of these emerging standards. And for developers to have access to this data so that we can see innovation and see interesting things happen as a result. And that's,
that's the reason I'm frustrated, Leo, about this is that, we've spent a lot of time working out these standards, and that's non-trivial work. And, there's a whole community of people out there, people with leaders like, Chris Messina, David Corden over at Facebook, great people at Twitter as well. The issue is none of this work, none of the standards work has any value at all if we don't have access to the data. So that's another, it's very frustrating to sort of be working on this stuff and then just kind of having people kind of not see that value, because in the end, what we want out of the internet as a whole, and specifically the web, the social web, is for it to continue to be this rife, pool of crazy life forms emerging. And that's just not possible unless you have that data out there and those standards on which people can build. So we can do stuff like we're already talking about prediction, market prediction games. Think about all the kinds of apps that you could build if you had access to all this Firehose data through places like Superfeedr instantaneously for just playing around with ways to predict stuff, anything from the stock market to to these epidemics we're talking about. That's like a huge potential there. We have stuff like analytics for impact analysis. How efficient are your tweets? How do you optimize your publishing? All that requires a lot of number crunching based on the statistics of all the aggregate data out there. So you can't build any of this stuff unless you have access to this data. So what makes me very frustrated is that I see a huge, tremendous business opportunity that we're just beginning to scratch. And it's not just business opportunity, it's actual value for society at large. And we really need access to this data in order to realize that potential value.
I think we're going to get there.
The ethic is it's our data.
Well, we're pumping the data in, and then there's this blockage. I think in Twitter's
the wisdom of the crowd.
I think in Twitter's case, the blockage is a technical one. I don't think they're perhaps they're trying to figure out how to monetize, but I think there's also a technical issues involved as well. I mean, let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
Another question. There's another question here that I have for you guys. Then there's some discussion, always has been discussion, that Google should release the scrape database. That having a lot of people do the crawling is kind of a waste. That's a standard. That's one level of the discussion. Then the New York Times was talking about how, and I think this was so John Henry ignorant of them, but they were talking about how Google's too powerful, says the argument. Show me the line where it says what's powerful enough, and thus the government should regulate its algorithm.
Yeah. Oh boy, that was a crazy article. Yeah.
It was insane.
Yeah.
But is there? But it's what you were saying. There's some level where we're saying that there's an ethic of releasing things and making them open because it's our stuff or because there's greater value out of it, because it's a smart thing to do. Where's that line? If Google does the scraping, but it's scraping the web that's our kind of web, should they be revealing that so that others can build on it? Would that be smart for them to do?
I would say, here's my thought. Here's my thought, that the raw data belongs to all of us. That is the public resource. But that just as you should be able to patent an innovation, I think people should be able to innovate and feel like they can generate value out of that innovation by protecting it. So
you add value.
You add value in your algorithm. So if Gina wanted to say, I'm not going to tell anybody how Think Tank works, but the raw data is available and the results she might want to sell, I think that's fine. I think that's how innovation happens. People are much more likely to do it if they can benefit from it, don't you think?
Yeah, I think you see Google.
Maybe there's a patent system though, or some sort of expiring kind of protection. Maybe this stuff
Google
should be...
just got a patent. This is a fascinating reverse here. Google got a patent. It's on the Friendfeed for revealing topics in which there's inadequate content, not enough content, which of course is the demand media model, where they go looking for that to see the opportunity for creating SEO valuable content.
Sounds like a defensive patent, maybe.
Exactly. So the speculation is that Google will open that up to the world, which just kills demand media,
Right.
and says, hey, whole world, fill in these blanks in the web.
Right.
And that's kind of fascinating to me, where it's a turnaround to saying that by having this analysis and opening it up, which is only speculation. And by the way, Matt Cutts and Hal Varian are two of the members of the patent team.
Oh, interesting. Well, they're the anti-spam guys, right?
Yeah.
So what does the acquisition of MetaWeb say to all of this? Actually, let's take a break and come back. We're going to talk about MetaWeb, the redesign of Google News, and the big announcement, the redesign of Google Images. And, of course, we've got your picks, your numbers. I've got a tip. We've got some Android news as well. It's all with lots of stuff to talk about. And we have about another 25 minutes to half an hour to talk about it. Jyri Engeström is here. He is a former Googler, founder of Jyri, and now a man about town. His blog is Engeström.com. Gina Trapani from smarterware.org, buzzmachine.com's Jeff Trapani. Jeff Jarvis.
We've been meaning to tell you something, Leo, yes.
Oh, boy. Jeff Jarvis is here. More coming up in just a bit. We do want to thank our friends at Citrix who are sponsoring the show today. Citrix creates a great array of remote access products, some of the best out there. Of course, the Citrix Enterprise, many of you will know and use in business. Go to Meeting, go to My PC. And for those of you in support, go to Assist. Go to assist.com. You can find out more about it. In fact, if you go to assist.com/TWiG right now, you get 30 days absolutely free of Go to Assist. This is really designed at the support professional. Really a useful tool. But I have to say, as somebody who supports family and friends, I find it useful too. They've got day passes for people like me, so I can once a month get a day pass and fix everybody's computers and move on. But if you do this day to day, you're going to really want to take a look at the monthly subscription. It is cost-effective, easy. It lets you fix the problem without being there in person. You can view another person's computer online and control it so you can resolve the technical issues quickly. It's remote access put to its best use, if you ask me, fixing other people's problems. You can use Go to Assist right now by going to gotoassist.com/TWiG, free for 30 days. Your clients do not have to have it installed ahead of time. You just send them a link. They follow that link to gotoassist.com, install the software. 30 seconds later, you're in and fixing the problem. From then on, if you wish, you can have unattended access to that machine. You can have up to 8 sessions at once, so it's great if you're starting a scan or an install. You can move to the next machine and next and next. You can even drag and drop fixes and installs and files from your computer to theirs, which is really great. If a malware bites or something, you want to drag it over and scan their machine. It also allows you to do an assay of what operating system is running, what software is running in the background, including security software, Mac or PC. So you don't have to have a PC to fix a Mac or a Mac to fix a PC. It really couldn't be better. I just love what they've done with this program, and I want you to try it. Absolutely free. You'll increase your revenue, reduce travel and support time, serve more clients, become a support hero. Go to assist.com/TWiG. Give it a try today. I think you're going to find a lot of use for it, even if you're just the support person for your family and friends. Go to assist.com/TWiG. We thank Citrix for their support of Go to Assist. So given what we've just talked about in all these subjects, MetaWeb makes a lot of sense. This is a semantic search startup. What does this add to Google's portfolio? Is it just a hire for the engineers, or is this Freebase, this open shared database of the world's knowledge that MetaWeb does, is this kind of part of what we're talking about here? Jyri, are you familiar with MetaWeb? Do you know what it does? Anybody?
Nope.
Uh-oh, we lost sound.
Jyri, I don't hear you. Oh, did I turn you off? No, you're still there. Are you there?
Hello.
There he is. Okay, good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, MetaWeb obviously, is assigning machine-readable meaning to the web and operates Freebase. But I don't have intimate knowledge of the details of that acquisition.
Right. It could be that Danny Hills was the point, the guy who started it. It could be that the Freebase is the point.
It seems like a general overall trend of interest towards structured data for Google, right?
Right.
On top of the travel data database. I mean, there have been a few stories like this.
It's pretty clear that Google realizes a mere index of web pages is not a good business going forward. You need to do more with the data that you're getting. you need to have more data. You need to be able to look into the dark web. You need to get things like travel information. You need to be able to put that information together for your customers to provide a better experience. That's what Bing kind of forced Google into, I think. That's kind of the idea behind Bing.
Right. I think we're seeing, I haven't heard many people talk about Wolfram Alpha recently, but, there's something here that, would suggest that Google is sort of thinking about ways to sort of maybe perhaps venture into the same space and, do it their own way, obviously. But
I guess MetaWeb is like Wolfram Alpha, isn't it? In that sense. It's understanding the data.
Sense,
yeah.
Whatever happened to Google Base?
Ooh,
I'm looking
I haven't
for
heard
it
that
right
in a
now.
long time.
Yeah, Google Base. Remember that?
What was that?
I'm looking at it now. It was a structured database. So, a way that you could do real estate listings and job listings. I just went to base.google.com and it says Google Base beta. I'm getting a sign into Merchant Center. But this, this seems like something similar to Google Base, which I haven't heard a whole lot about. I remember writing it up on Lifehacker quite a long time ago.
I think it's different, Gina. Google Base was that you could submit data that was then searchable in a new way by Google.
Is that like null?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's what the difference is.
Okay.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
So it's knowledge.
It was knowledge. Well, knowledge is more like a wiki, right? But
Right.
Base was more like a spreadsheet or a database of data. But you created it and you entered the data.
So if you're an economist that had a huge big data set, you could put it in there.
Yeah.
And Google would be able to chew on it.
Yeah. It classified ads seemed to be the big thing that it could do, kind of like Craigslist. But,
Okay.
on October
That's why
8th,
the merchant
2009.
login. That's why it's now going to merchant login.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at the Wikipedia article. It says October 2009. It was announced that Google Base's separate search page would be discontinued.
Too bad. Well, one page not deemed discontinued, one page that's growing. Google image search, 10 billion images served a day, 1 billion page views. Clearly, Google sees this as a very valuable product. In fact, they had an event, a search event in San Francisco this week. Marissa Mayer announced a revamp of Google Images. It looks just like Bing.
It does. It looks very much like Bing.
Google's getting Bingish.
But I'm going to talk about what you can do with it in my tip.
Ah, good.
Okay.
Well, we won't give that
I can't
away.
get it to even give me that pretty stuff.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So do you not want me to talk any more about this, but save it?
Well, we can do it. We can do it now if you want.
No. Save your tip. We'll talk about Google image
We're
search.
so sensitive about our little terms.
Oh, don't
Stay
mess.
out of my tips, Leo.
Don't mess with the tips, baby. Google Energy bought its first property, wind power. I love it that I have to think it's Larry and Sergey who are the activists here, that they really want to promote their agenda, and in this case, and it makes sense because Google's a huge consumer of energy. Google Energy agreed to purchase 114 megawatts of wind power per year for the next 20 years. So they locked it in with the Iowa wind farm called NextEra Energy Resources.
I saw a tweet, and I didn't see a source for it, from our friend Siva, that I believe said that 10% of the energy in the U.S. is now used of electricity in the U.S. is now used for computers.
Holy cow. Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not. I'm sure Siva wouldn't. I just didn't have a link. But it says that gives you an idea of the. This is enlightened self-interest for Google.
Right.
If they can get good, clean power cheaper than coal, it's better for nobody in the economy practically than them.
They invested $38 million before there was a Google Energy in NextEra Energy's wind generation projects in North Dakota. They also have bought startups like Altarock Energy, eSolar, and AlertMe. So some of this is philanthropic, and some of it is self-interest. And it's nice if you can combine both.
Exactly.
Yeah. The purchase of these wind megawatts actually is just locking in their business costs. Pretty interesting.
Right. I mean, actually, what they're purchasing is the RECs, right?
Right.
They're not actually planning to directly use that energy.
Oh, they just get the credit.
Yeah, they're just buying the credits so that they can,
pollute.
Proceed on the way. Yeah, exactly. Become more carbon neutral.
That's good. So they're really what they bought is carbon credits then.
Yeah.
You had an article in on Buzz Machine. Google takes the FTC to school, Jeff Jarvis.
It was kind of beautiful because Google, I've been arguing, has been trying to make friends of people who only want enemies. That is to say, newspapers.
Right.
And they've been, working with kid gloves and working together and saying nice things. They finally, the FTC, and I've talked about this on the show, came up with these ridiculous suggestions from people who testified for how to fix the news industry, which is to say how to rescue newspapers. And Google finally, I think, must have had it and wrote this wonderful document that's a primer taking the FTC and the newspaper industry to school and just not taking their bull anymore, not accepting the myths that search is bad. It kind of explained the industry to them. There was this wonderful first paragraph that just said, or that I put on the top of my post, that just explained to them that we're in an abundance economy now, not a scarcity economy anymore. Things have changed. It's never going to be the same. Deal with it. And it's a very good document. I put the highlights on Buzz Machine.
Yeah, I like
it's about a 25-page document. It's a long document, but it's really very well done.
The current challenges
read
faced.
Jeff's post.
Yeah,
it's
a really good post. The challenges faced by the news industry are not legal problems; they're business problems, and they can only be addressed with business solutions, not regulation, things like that. Yeah. So this is in response to a discussion draft from the FTC that would have what purpose?
Well, the FTC is out there contemplating what to do, and the FTC could come along and do some very dangerous things. And
really?
So Google's real goal is to not get them to support things like extending copyright in ways that would support news organizations, to go for this hot news doctrine that would say that someone could own facts and news for some period of time, not to limit fair use, not to enable newspapers to operate in antitrust and do price fixing or gang up on Google and other aggregators to charge them with the support of government. These are the things that the FTC is talking about in there. And though they're saying, oh, it's just discussion, we're not endorsing anything, but it's what they chose to discuss. And Google finally sees danger there and came up with a very strong, sensible, smart, well-researched statement. And part of this is just the history. It's like we're talking about books before. We've been here before. Newspaper people thought that radio was going to ruin the world and TV was going to ruin the world. Now the internet's going to ruin the world. Well, it's the world.
Interesting. The Guardian calculates that the Times Online, which put up its paywall recently, has lost 90% of its readership. Mm-hmm. The number of people, that's one quarter of people landing on the Times registration page sign up, but that the website is now receiving just 4% of the UK's online newspaper visitations. So clearly the paywall is not a solution that Rupert Murdoch hoped it would be.
Well, they'll say that they don't know yet, and they
don't care. Maybe they're happy with 10%.
That they would get the 10%, but it clearly is not a strategy for all and for the future. And I still think it's a surrender by Murdoch. He didn't have any new ideas for advertising. He didn't have any new ideas for growth. And so, he's retreating, which is odd for a guy who's normally so macho.
Yeah.
I think that the Guardian was looking at this further. Now, the Times people will say back to the Guardian, well, the Guardian is losing a fortune. They haven't figured it out either, which is true.
So, more revisions in the Google News site, not in response to this, but in fact in response to user and reader complaints. They're kind of cleaning it up a little bit. I may be one of the few that actually uses news.google.com all the time. I actually like it.
I do too.
Oh, okay, good.
I use it occasionally.
I thought it was just me. Okay.
Is it like your homepage or what?
No, but it's a place I go for my beat check. So, in fact, there's two places I go for my beat check pretty much regularly. One is Tech Meme, to see what people are talking about. And Tech Meme still is pretty valuable, pretty good. And then, so that gives me the human, it wasn't human-powered for a long time, but it is now human-powered. But human-powered in the sense that it's kind of saying, here's what people are talking about, versus the kind of purely mechanical results that I get from news.google.com. But I do like to check it because it does tell me at least what the stories are. I guess the difference is it's not so much how many. Google News seems to be how many stories there are, and these are the most written about stories, and tech meme seems to be these are the most talked about stories, things people are really caring about. So I think that's a good combination, the two of them together. At least
how many RSS feeds do you tend to go through?
You know, I still do go to Reader. You know, and I have a Google section. So before I do the show, I will go to reader.google.com and look at the Google section, which is all the Google blogs.
Yep,
all 8,000 of them, or whatever it is. There's some unknown huge number of them, and then a few sites like Fandroid and stuff that cover Google products. It's really kind of it's getting bigger all the time now. So
I had kind of a fun experience this week. I did a post about Google Voice. I've been covering this sort of Google Apps accounts catching up to regular Google accounts for a while.
Yes, and, we should talk about that.
And so I had a reader. So I kind of worried aloud about, I said, well, I don't mind exporting all my data from one account and importing it into another, but Google Voice is one of those things that I was worried, how am I going to get my number from my old Google account to my Google Apps account? And so a reader of mine said, hey, there's this form that Google set up and you could just issue a request. And so I tried it and it worked. They transferred my number. So I did a post about it, and then Lifehacker picked it up. And then I got a voicemail from the Google Voice product manager.
Really?
and I don't give out my number very much. I'm kind of protective of my phone number. And my first thought was, how did he get my number?
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh,
he's Google. He knows
Google
all.
Voice, manager. Yeah. So anyway, long story short, the form doesn't work for everyone, and they've just been doing it for a small subset of accounts. But there will be a way to port your Google Voice number over to your apps account once the app stuff that they're testing does go live. And they're also testing multiple sign-in so like you're in one browser window and you say, hey, I've got these two Google accounts. You can assign into them at the same time and switch them using a drop-down. I think that's also in our Friendfeed this week.
Good. Good. I've gone back and forth on the iPhone 4, and I finally just gave up, and I bought the Droid X, and I am really liking this. I really am. It's a nice big screen. I think I'm now converted. The Evo started the process, but once you get used to having a 4.3-inch screen, it's kind of hard to go back to the smaller screens. And I just
can you get all your apps there? Like, that's the key thing for me. Is like I find it hard to not get some of the apps that I rely on. So I'm curious.
Yeah, well, it depends what your apps are, obviously, but I get the apps that I want, I guess. Mint, Recall, which I use as my to-do list, is on Google. Seismic, I use. Foursquare, Bump, Evernote. Audible has a great app, which I use all the time. LastPass, PogoPlug, and Dropbox. Yelp, Zagat, TripIt. I would say Major League Baseball. It's interesting. There's a really large selection of apps on here now. Pandora, Skype. This, unfortunately, comes with a lot of Motorola baggage on it, which is too bad.
That's what Gizmodo did a pretty good review and said that the kind of default apps were really that the home screens were super cluttered and you had to clear away all this other stuff.
Well,
and there's
I'm
also the issue
talk about that in just a little bit. I'll tell you how you can fix that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And the eFuse?
That's an interesting issue, and it hasn't been confirmed. Initially, they said it bricks the phone if you try to root it. Mm-hmm. And now, I was going to do it on the show, but nobody's got a root for it yet, so I have to wait. But once the Cyanogen ROM comes out or a root comes out for the Droid X, I will be glad to do this on my Droid X just to see what happens. What Motorola says is, first of all, it's not eFuse. That's a trademark name that I think IBM came up with. It's nothing like that. They said to protect, and actually I think this is legitimate, to protect the user if the baseband of firmware has been modified or some of the key firmware is modified, it boots into recovery mode, and from there you can boot back, get a standard firmware and boot back to it. It does not brick it. It just forces it into recovery mode. Of course, I want it to be an open phone. And I think if people want an open phone, they should get a Nexus 1 before they run out, because Google has stopped selling them. No, they sell them.
Carriers will have them, Chris DeBona said.
Really?
Yeah.
I love the Nexus 1. And I think the Incredible's pretty close. But the thing about the Nexus 1 is it's pure.
It's pure Google experience.
There's no crap from a carrier on it. It's pure.
And it's the only phone running 2.2.
Yeah, although this is supposed to get 2.2 August 15th, Droid X.
That's soon.
Yeah, that's what they told me at AT&T. I'm counting on that. So
AT&T?
Yeah. I mean,
Verizon, you mean?
Verizon, sorry about that. That's one of the main selling points, by the way. It's not AT&T. Now, I've been very happy with it. I like the big screen.
Now, what about the rumors that LTE is going to be out this fall?
Well, then I'll have to get another phone, won't I? There's also rumors flying now that Verizon's about to do tiered data as AT&T does. And I imagine everybody's been watching carefully with AT&T to see if there are howls of pain. And since there haven't been any, everybody would like to do tiering on their data plans. So I think that's what you're going to see on every phone company. One phone company or two maybe, the also-rans, maybe Sprint and T-Mobile, will probably be holdouts on this, right? And say, no, we'll still give you all you can eat. But I have a feeling that Verizon and AT&T for sure, maybe Sprint as well, will do tiering sooner than later. Kindle's on this. And, of course, all the great Google apps that I love, Shopper and Goggles and Gesture Search and all of that. I'm really a fan of Android. I went back to the iPhone 4 just briefly, just to see. The antenna issue really did hurt me. I was getting a lot of dropped calls. And I really missed Android and the power of Android.
I got permission to get one for my birthday.
Happy birthday. He's got an iPhone 4, everybody.
Yeah,
and
so I got it, and you know, I think I kind of have to have it. My wife looked at me dubiously when I said that.
No, I think you do. I have one. I'm not going to give it back.
I think I do for school and everything, the video particularly. But yeah, the thrill was gone. It just said, okay, so it's
just another phone now.
Yeah.
Yep.
They haven't really advanced the art in significant ways.
No, and in fact, I think at least in a couple of areas, notifications is one, screen widgets is another. They feel a little antiquated. I wish I could customize the screen more on the iPhone. It's a beautiful screen, but it's just a stack of icons are now folders. I feel like Apple is very much in the situation they were in 1994, or maybe even earlier, early 90s, when they had a huge lead because of Mac OS. And Microsoft was chugging along, finally came out with Windows 3.0, then Windows 3.1, then Windows 95, and effectively achieved parity. And I think what you're seeing here is the analogy I make. I really feel like the iPhone is very much like OS 7 was, System 7 was, and the Android is very much like Windows was. It's catching up, and it's iterating much more quickly than Apple. Apple can only iterate yearly. Android's iterating monthly practically. New handsets all the time, and interesting new hardware. You've got a variety of hardware, which is part of the power of the PC platform. You could put Windows on a variety of different hardware, and that diversity really helped the PC world. Where Apple was only on Apple stuff, and I think that's a very close analogy. I also feel like there's a little rough-edgedness to Android that some Mac people say, oh, I miss the elegance of Apple, and I think that's very much like System 7 versus Windows 95. But I think it's very clear that Android's catching up, and in fact, if you look at installed base, Android is gaining rapidly on even the iPhone 4, as well as that sold. Far more Android handsets are being sold right now.
Number of the week.
I won't say
Number
it.
of the week.
I won't say a word. I won't say a word. So I didn't think this would happen. I thought I was going to go back to the iPhone 4, and it was the reception issues that finally did it for me. And yeah, there's two applications I miss: We Rule and Words with Friends. They're better games. I'm sorry to say, much better games on the iPhone.
Did you get the bumper?
Has anyone made an app that allows you to just copy all your apps, basically one for one, from the iPhone to the Android and vice versa if you wanted to switch?
You mean an emulator? Wouldn't that be cool? An iPhone emulator? Never happened.
Just if I switch phones, I could just copy my experience.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, that actually, to me, that's a real strength of Android, is that you can move from phone to phone and take your apps with you with AppBrain, or Froyo lets you. I think Froyo lets you do that. What is it? I think so. Is it a Froyo thing, Gina? I can't remember. I had to reinstall all my apps, but I just went to AppBrain and I said I have a new phone, and I was able to very quickly get all the apps moved over that I
just say install all.
Right.
I think that app data gets. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if apps go.
There is some good Motorola stuff on here. There's a backup program that backs up all of your apps and files onto the SD card. I think that's kind of nice. There's a Blockbuster app. Who cares? Need for Speed Shift. I have to say, it isn't that you can't write a good game on Android, because this game is amazing on Android. So we were having a little debate on Mac Break Weekly over that, and I don't know how hard it is to develop for Android, but I have to say it's clear that you can make a very good game. Need for Speed Shift on the Droid X is really pretty spectacular and plenty fast. So all in all, I'm very happy. Battery life is the only sticking point, as always. And I think the iPhone 4 really did. Jeff, has your experience with battery life been pretty good on the iPhone 4? It has been on mine. I'm sad to say.
I haven't been using it enough.
Yeah, it's. I wish I had that kind of battery life on this thing. It barely gets through the day, but better than the
Droid?
Evo. Yeah, the Droid X is. The problem, really with all of these is you use them so much. The screen is always on because you're always playing around with it. So I don't know if it's a good test, really. Maybe as I get used to it. Anyway, a little thumbnail.
My master plan is to have the iPhone and then get the Droid X. That way I get a Verizon, and I still have a GSM phone.
That's my master plan. That's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did. And
Will you carry the iPhone still?
No. That's for international travel.
Did you get a bumper?
Yeah, I had to get a case, and it still didn't help.
It still didn't help?
Well, I'm not in New York. You probably don't have this problem, but I'm not in a good area for AT&T. It just drops calls like crazy.
I'm not where I live.
That was what finally did it for me. It was I dropped my fifth call in 2 days. I was like, I cannot do this. I'm dying here.
It is a phone.
It's a phone first.
Yeah.
If it's not a phone, what is it? All right, I'm just gonna play the Need for Speed. You guys continue on with the show, will you?
Yeah, I want to see this.
It is an awesome game, I have to say. It's a lot of fun.
I'm already afraid for my productivity.
Well, are you going to get a Droid X as opposed to? I mean, I still, every time I pick up the Nexus One, I go, boy, this still is a great phone.
So does this not run? Oh, this doesn't run. You can't install this on the Nexus One. Is that the deal?
I don't know. This just came on the Motorola, so.
Oh, it just came on it. Interesting.
Yeah, I haven't tried it on anything.
That looks really good.
Oh, it's fantastic, and the big screen really makes it a lot of fun, and it's got an accelerometer, so it's just like this.
Yeah, that looks really fun.
Just like the iPhone. I think the graphics clearly keep up. Oh, I just shattered the windshield. Oh no! I'm not a good driver. It's really fun.
I'm gonna be heartbroken if this isn't in the market. My phone's in the other room.
I'll go check for you. You like driving games?
I do.
Look what I did with the windshield.
Look nice.
I spidered it.
It doesn't look stuttery at all.
No, the frame rate's quite good. I mean, I don't know if you can see how the resolution is not, it's not super good. But let me see if I can. Here, where's the camera? There it is. I'll get it a little bit closer. There.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely playable.
Oh, it's nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry
that looks really fun. I'm mesmerized.
Okay,
That's it.
I just brought the show to a halt. I grind it to a halt. Let's check on AppBrain whether it's available on other platforms. But I guess the point is, and somebody John Gruber was on Mac Break Weekly yesterday, and he said a well-known developer friend of his said it's very hard to develop for Android because of bugs in the OpenGL implementation that are different on each platform, and that makes a lot of sense. So maybe
this mixed platform thing is going to
bite them.
Be the problem. Yep.
Yeah. But again, it's why they can iterate so fast. So it is both the strength and the weakness of it. And Microsoft had this problem in the early days of PCs, and Microsoft had to act very aggressively to do things like DirectX and make sure that there was a standard. And this is what Google's going to have to do, is say, no, look, we've got to have a consistent, reliable OpenGL implementation that can be written to across all platforms. Differences in screen sizes, I don't think is the issue. I think the problem really is because it's a cell phone, you've got carriers and manufacturers modifying it. And they can't stop that because it's open. And I think that's the real problem. But boy, we've come a long way, haven't we, Jyri, since the early days of Nokia. I mean, these phones are very powerful. Nokia looking for a new CEO, in fact, because they have just been suffering against the iPhone.
Share price is down 40% since April.
Yeah. It's too bad. I mean, they have Symbian, which is I think a very nice OS. They've got Maemo, which I haven't been too happy with on the N900. It's a little heavyweight for a portable device, but they've got some useful stuff, and of course they still sell more handsets than anybody in the world.
So this is an interesting stat, by the way, when we're talking about developing for these different mobile platforms that I just picked up on Twitter, where the months to mastery for a developer to master mobile platform. Symbian, 15 months. iPhone, 7.5 months.
Huh.
Android, only 5 months. So
where did that
based
come
on this
from?
Let me check.
Need for Speed Shift is, in fact, in the Android market. Gina, you can get it.
Oh.